Hi, Lena. Great to have you here. Now, this was the story of a corporate who is not stopping growing. You're at the very beginning of that journey. Maybe you help us a little bit to understand what A2A is. We all know B2B, B2C, or we just saw B2B2C, etc. But now A2A. What is this and what are you doing?
I think it's typically easier to look at it from a consumer point of view, because what we are at Brite Payments is a pay-by-bank payment method online. So as a consumer, you can essentially use your bank account to make a payment at any given online merchant, online platform, marketplace, you name it. In industry terms, we are a provider of instant account-to-account payments, which means that we leverage the open banking framework to process payments instantly between a consumer and a merchant, so not peer-to-peer, which in an online context means that it's an extremely accessible payment method, but also comes with a number of advantages for merchants, making it a lot more efficient, lower cost, and in terms of European sovereignty, also a real contender to the large payment schemes that we have with Visa and MasterCard.
And that makes you unique, or is something else we need to know here?
What makes us unique, open banking, of course, is not new, and Germany especially is a fairly mature market for account-to-account, especially. For those of you who've heard of Sofortüberweisung, that is actually a account-to-account payment method of the first generation. The difference is that in the first generation providers, the money would flow directly from the consumer bank account to the merchant's bank account. So it was really more of a technical initiation service, which meant also that providers such as us wouldn't have had insight into the arrival of the funds, which meant that there were losses, of course, connected to processing those payments and operational inefficiencies. What we have done at Brite, as a second-generation challenger, as we like to see ourselves, is we've built our own instant payment network. So in our case, the funds go directly from the consumer bank account into our instant payment network, which allows us also to reimburse consumers, for example, for refunds, but also to process payouts and to settle the funds much more quickly. And in Germany now, especially where we have the new instant payment directive, more than 95% of our payments currently settle within just a few seconds. So that also comes with cash flow advantages and makes A2A as a whole, of course, a more interesting category moving forward.
That's super exciting. Your investors are not in the room, at least I hope. How are you earning money?
So we are a B2B2C business model, which is common in payments, which means that it's the merchants who pay for processing the payments. For consumer, the service is always free of charge. As a matter of fact, there is no sign-up required for consumers, so all you need is a bank account and you're good to go. So from that point of view, there's no way for us to monetize consumers, and we have no such ambitions. But for merchants, it's a lower cost payment method, and therefore that's where all the revenue comes from, our transactional revenues.
Oh, you're eating the revenue pool of all the card folks.
Yes.
Okay,
Indeed.
that's clear. That's clear. Now I got it. So obviously, a big question for you: what are the challenges? And I think thank you for that slide, because I think it's a good background for answering. So what are the challenges for your growth? That's such a super idea. And the regulators did bring cards down, but only not to the full extent. It's now cheaper than it was, whatever, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But how are you growing? How are you eating this profit pool?
So generally speaking, for the whole category of the account-to-account payments, the prerequisites are getting better and better because the infrastructure is improving. There's more consumers using online banking apps, which are needed to sign off on any individual payments in an account-to-account setting. So that is improving. So the category itself is slowly growing, but of course what is needed to actually become a true competitor to card schemes is acceptance on the merchant side. So we need higher awareness among online merchants to start accepting account-to-account payments across Europe. This is very similar to how other payment methods have grown. I myself have a background in Klarna and in the buy now pay later space. It's a very similar journey in terms of driving adoption. And then of course at the same time you have to have awareness on the consumer side. So consumers ultimately drive payment choice and checkout, and if consumers are demanding any given payment method, merchants will be more inclined to offer it. So to that extent, it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, and you have to scale both sides of demand at the same time, and therefore competition in this space is actually good because we're all working towards increasing awareness among consumers and merchants alike.
So the competition will help to establish the category in the consumer perception, so externalizing all your marketing and sales costs. So what are the specific growth strategies on that sales merchant penetration side from Brite Payments?
So I think anybody who has worked with larger online retailers or any merchants of the kind knows that it's a fairly complex business to handle. Many merchants will have 60, 70, 80 different payment methods in the different markets, and therefore they rely on PSPs often to help them streamline their payment operations. And PSPs also, of course, benefit from card processing often, but they're also key to unlock the go-to-market for merchants to start offering payment methods. And what we're seeing now in Europe, where the account-to-account space is that the first PSPs are starting to adopt the first account-to-account payment methods, but we're not yet at a stage where every single PSP, and with PSP I mean the Adyen's of the world, will offer you a wide range of account-to-account. That will take a couple of years, and that is, of course, one important factor of the go-to-market strategy. Today, what we do, along with most of our competitors, we already directly integrate with merchants, and that is given sort of the benefits on the cost side and the efficiency. Merchants are fortunately incentivized to do so, but of course only to a certain extent, and pending the complexity of the payment stack.
You did start out of Scandinavia,
yes.
Payment Dorado, Sweden, where all the innovation takes place. We had a chat about Tink and others. And you're scaling throughout Europe. Can you tell a little bit the story how you scaled throughout Europe?
Yeah, so when I started the business, we're Stockholm, Sweden-based. We started targeting all the major markets in Europe that already have a strong demand for account-to-account. And that is currently the case in Scandinavia, Sweden and Finland, very large markets, but also in the Baltics. Germany is another market, or even the Netherlands. So any market that has previously had a history of other account-to-account payment methods. Ideal, actually, in the Netherlands is also an account-based payment method, because that's where you already have consumers that are used to paying with a bank-based payment methods, essentially. So that's how we started out. We have since grown into more markets across Europe, very much customer-driven. And since we operate under the Swedish regulator, we can passport our license. And I thought that Alexander from Konto made a very important point earlier, because indeed, when it comes to scaling the business, regulation is key. And what we see in Europe right now in financial services is that whilst we're all working towards the same EBA guidelines, the local interpretations by the different regulatory bodies are actually quite different, which means that oftentimes the competitive prerequisites differ. So frankly put, if I'm a Swedish-based provider targeting the German market, I will have different regulatory requirements than a provider based in Germany or in the Baltics, and that impacts the product in the end.
Absolutely. Payments just to be a directive, not a regulation from the EU side, and yes, this is complexity. This is a super exciting story. If you do a fast forward 5 years from today, so how does Brite Payment look then?
So we are a consumer-branded payment method. So consumers will always see that they're paying with Brite. There are different approaches to the market. The reason why we do that is that we believe that in time, as account-to-account reaches maturity in Europe, consumers will be demanding the same level of consumer protection from an account-based payment method as they're used to from other payment methods, for example, such as PayPal or Klarna, so some level of consumer protection. We would hope that we would establish ourselves more firmly also in the eyes of the consumer. We have managed to do that from a merchant point of view, I think, in certain regions so far quite well. We became profitable in 2022 for the first time. But moving forward, we want to be more present with consumer also. What we already see is, in the past 2 years, a lot has happened in the account-to-account payment space, where the market used to be very, very crowded, and now we're seeing concentration across a number of select providers that are regional champions, and I would imagine that trend would also continue.
Lena, thank you so much. Unfortunately, our time is over. I see it here, the watch is blinking. Thank you so much. Thank you to Lena Hackelöer.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.